All right, we are now live on LinkedIn and on YouTube. So we're going to have viewers joining us from both of those platforms on here. And another great episode of Account Based Fridays with marketing leaders. And this was unique because when we teed this up, she was a marketing leader. And we're going to save the formal introduction in a moment of Marilyn. Thank you, Marilyn, for joining us. Each week we start with a poll, and we polled our audience and looked at kind of the situation at hand. It's been, for some people, and depending on what part of the globe, it's been more stressful for them to kind of, operate on a day-to-day basis, and it definitely impacts marketers as well in terms of their outreach strategy. So the poll question that we asked this week was your digital marketing outreach impacted by the global events? And while not statistically significant, we did get a fair number of votes and pretty, evenly distributed here. I guess my question was how much of this event is kind of global in nature? And I know it's impacted me just in my own mind, but a lot of peers that I talk to seem to be pausing at the regional level, including our clients. They seem to be pausing at the regional level. But I don't know, Megan, what was your reaction to this week's poll?
Yeah, I mean, I'm glad to see that, somewhere on the order of half of people are making some kind of a change. I think it's important. I know, for example, at Winning by Design, we were asked to pause on our posts. And then when we went back to pay attention to the tone that we were using, this isn't party time. This is a global crisis. Like, it's a big deal. And I think for those who are wondering what they need to change, and wondering, sort of what position they may need to take, if any, at least a pause. I think certainly, it can be appropriate. If not, starting to think about what do we need to do differently. And then for some too, I mean, you've got literal crises for people on your team. If you've got people in Ukraine, like people who are, truly struggling as a result of this horrible tragedy, I think it's, that's important too. So how are you showing up for those people and helping them? And yeah, all of those things, I think I'm not surprised, but I would, and I suspect as this goes on, you'll see those numbers will go more to making some kind of a change. But Marilyn, we're so excited you're here. Marilyn Cox will tell us about her exciting promotion, but she's just been, a highly acclaimed marketing leader at a number of different organizations, and in some really interesting markets as well. And Marilyn, we're just excited for you to tell us a little bit about your journey and your background and your most recent really cool success. But before we do that, what are your thoughts on our poll today? What do you think?
The thing that I've been mulling over the more that I've read is I don't even know if when you have times like this that you can even think regionally, because everything is global, right? I mean, that's, especially as marketers, something that we've all recognized is you have the ability to reach everyone, everywhere, anytime. And so the assumption that, if I just filter out certain countries when I send my automated email campaign, that's going to cover things is probably misguided and incorrect. I think the other thing too that stands out, and we were chatting about this a little bit ago, is the outbound outreach and communications is one way to think about it, and understanding what do we talk about, what do we not talk about, who do we communicate to. But I think the other thing that marketers often struggle with, and companies as a whole, is, do we need to be more proactive in making a statement? And if so, how do we do that? Because it has become, over the last several years, such a minefield. So it'll be really interesting to see how different organizations adjust and pivot based on how the world reacts. And as you were both saying, I can look internally at our own organization, and we have developers that are in the Ukraine, and it's so much more than just what message are we putting out there. I think that organizations are really just trying to figure out how to help and assist those people that are really, really impacted right now. So it's becoming such a broad operational discussion too.
Yeah, for sure. So much connectedness and hopefully empathy too. With that, though, we'll maybe switch gears to a little bit of a happier topic. And that is, you had an exciting post on LinkedIn today. Would love for you to tell us a little bit about the promotion you just received, because it's not something that many marketers get a chance to do. Tell us a little bit about that.
Yeah, I've made the what is oftentimes kind of an unusual shift from getting to function and operate in this like amazing marketing organization that I've been a part of, where we support 8 different companies within our holding company, to now really owning P&L and operating a business. So I'm officially this week taking over as president of Presto Sports, which is one of the fabulous companies in our Club Essential Holding portfolio.
Yeah, super exciting. And I think interesting too, because the sports tech market, the sports market generally, I think is a really hot one, and something that so many people care about. What kinds of things are you thinking about, with the business and sort of with that market in general? What are some of the trends and things that you're seeing?
Yeah, I think it's both. There's always the internal thought and what we need to be doing internally as an organization, and then certainly externally what's happening in the market. I mean, I think every industry has their COVID impact story. This is the impact this had on us. Granted, right now I'm a bit biased, but I will say that in the world of sports, it was devastating, because it wasn't as simple as, okay, well, we can't do live theater anymore, but we can perform theater and stream it and people can watch it. Or you have DoorDash and Uber Eats and other things that can help keep the restaurants open. For the better part of a year, if not more, just sports in general could not be played. So there wasn't even that content for these athletic departments to do something with. Not to mention the fact that economically, the impact that it had on them, there's this big trickle-down effect. So we play a lot in the college athletic space. The moment in 2020 when they had to cancel the NCAA men's basketball tournament, the financial hit that not just D1 schools felt, but because a percentage of that revenue goes to D2 and D3, had just a tremendous impact on smaller universities. And so a lot of them have had to either cut programs, certainly scale back. Some even universities, period, are merging, right? Small schools. And so there's a lot of shakeup in that dynamic. But what's also amazing is how resilient this industry is. And the fact that people that are running these programs have taken a step back and realized that it's not just quote unquote sports. They're really creating sports entertainment experiences. And so it's allowing us as an organization to think about how we are helping them not just capture content, but really figure out how do we take that content and then how do we market it? Because that is going to, the 3 value points that we tend to hit on is you want to ignite your fan base, you want to elevate your brand and your athletes, and then you want to be able to fund your programs. And so if you can create that type of digital entertainment experience from before the clock starts to even after the last play, it's going to do all of those things. And technology in this instance is really going to help them execute on that.
You said so much there that resonated, in particular, the college, the impact of the NCAA tournament. I hadn't really thought about the Division II and Division III schools.
Yeah.
It's funny because next week I'm going to be going to a tournament in Madison Square Garden, and I'm wringing my hands because it is my first college basketball game that I'm returning to. So this COVID thing has really impacted that kind of segment. And certainly the other thing that you said there about the fans and how you want to kind of energize them. You don't get much more passionate fans than college basketball fans this time of year. So, but going back for a moment to your promotion, and that's not something to sneeze at there. Very few marketers have made that transition. I think in the 9 months that we've been running this session, we've had one other marketer that's made that transition to another operating role as a CRO. You've made it to president. What kind of tips or advice would you give somebody, or what do you feel like really resonated or helped as a CMO to get to a president title? Because that is amazing.
Yeah, I mean, some of it is just deciding it's what you want to do, because then you can put in place a bit of a path forward and a plan, and have conversations with those people that are going to help guide you and get you there. I will say I am also fortunate that I grew up as a marketer in the age of the marketing automation enlightenment, where what was once such a creative discipline really grew into be something that was much more data driven. And that's really what allowed marketers to kind of elevate themselves beyond maybe where people had always kind of viewed a marketing organization previously. So there was so much education that I was getting in those early days with, like, you know, my shout outs for like Eloquad, Serious Decisions, you know, I mean, like that fed me. Like those were my master program classes very early on. And because of that, and because you did have that context and information that you could bring to the table, I think it allowed me to become much more cross-functional. So my role in the organizations I've worked with has never been relegated to marketing, or you need to make sure that you focus on sales alignment. It's been our CFO. I don't know what I would do without him. You know, I have like regular interactions with our chief financial officer, our chief technology officer, staying very, very connected there, product and product development. So I think that it just gave me a different perspective. And then all of the great things that I do get out of working in that marketing capacity, even aside from data and decision making, I mean, you learn how to create and craft messages. You learn how to be brief and concise. You learn how to read and understand the market, which is so huge because it's constantly changing. And so to kind of immerse yourself in a market, an industry, a space, and become an expert there, and learn how to translate that in a way that you're connecting both, in these instances, like the tech with the market, I think has also been very beneficial to the path that I took.
Yeah, no doubt. I think having that quantitative underpinning, being able to communicate success in numbers is huge. I also love that you did a shout out for a relationship with the CFO. To me, that's something not enough. I would say marketing and also customer success, customer experience. I think there's a huge benefit to being best friends with your CFO because they want to help, you know, and I think it's people are sort of afraid sometimes, but they shouldn't be. I mean, that could be the best relationship you have, I think, as a marketing leader, right?
Oh yeah. Well, and they have the context behind decision making, you know, and I think that's something that definitely prior, you know, within the last 5 years or so, that I don't know if I fully appreciated, which was the fact that it's not just revenue. And of course it depends on the business and the business model you work in and stuff. But in the world that I live in, it's not just, okay, how much revenue are we creating? While that's important, I mean, there are a lot of things that dictate, okay, if you spend and how that affects EBITDA, and understanding how all of that starts to tie together. And it makes you it made me a better financial steward of our marketing spend. And we always would hear when we would justify marketing tech, right? Like you have to be able to demonstrate a return. Yeah, true. But I do think that you own more than just the marketing tech budget. You have the entire marketing budget, and being that good financial steward and then helping other people that are impacted by those decisions understand, I think has been really, really important.
Yeah. Can you describe kind of any of the changes that you've made to your marketing budgets in the past based on, you know, sort of taking that bigger picture, or any advice that you'd offer when people need to shift to that way of thinking?
Yeah, and it's probably not popular among marketers. I even say this internally. I'm like, I probably am the opposite of what most people would be in that world, in that I'm very conservative with spend. So now, again, I spend a lot of time and tracking in this instance Salesforce to understand where are we seeing return. But I do think it's helped us understand maybe not where we need to cut budget, but it's where you shift it, you know, and that's a lot of times the conversations that I have internally with our teams is, it's not that I'm saying we don't need to go to that event. It's just maybe not on that scale, or maybe it's a different event, or if we look regionally at how things have performed, investing more in one area versus another might serve us well. So for me, it's almost even more of the shifting of where we're spending versus even just where are we going to increase or decrease at a high level.
Yeah, it's that portfolio approach, right?
Yes.
Like where, just like if you're investing in anything else, you think about it as a portfolio and you maximize, the things that are going to get you the return you want.
Yeah, exactly. I mean, and then you go in and you look and you're like, all right, well, and I will say one thing that we've started to do is try to, as a department, get better at thinking beyond just what originates from marketing activity, because we could go in and we'd look at our dashboards and go, well, if you look at cost per opportunity or cost per, acquisition costs, our inbound efforts are going to blow everything else out of the water every single time. But if we go in and we look at influence and campaign influence over time, then it does demonstrate that like the education that we deliver and our presence at events is in the long run having a really positive impact, and we need to make sure we take that into consideration. So I think we've tried to get a little bit more mature as well when we think about like financial impact.
Yeah, definitely.
Going back to what you were saying there with the really teaming up with your CFO and being able to speak the language of the CFO. I think you bring up an excellent point there, and maybe other marketers too should be looking at how to read a balance sheet or understand a balance sheet, a P&L, particularly valuable because a lot of marketers that go public could be in that situation where you have to address Wall Street and you have to know those numbers. I'm a little bit biased there because I'm a finance undergrad, so I would probably err in that direction. But I guess my question on that would be, in addition to the finance side, what other things did you feel were helpful that led to, you said kind of the deciding, which I think is a really good point too. So the deciding and the CFO, what other relationships do you feel like really helped to bridge that gap to become president? Because I'm guessing you're interfacing with board and other peers as well. So it's beyond that. Where else would you suggest looking?
I think there are probably a couple of areas, and they tend to be very relationship oriented, and it'll depend on every case and the organization someone's working for. In my instance, I do think that relationships and alignment across many, many departments really set me up well, because you could go and talk to our CTO, or you could go talk to one of the VPs of sales at any of the companies, or you could go talk to somebody that runs ops at another. And the positive working relationship that not just me, but the team that I work with, that we were able to establish, I think really put in the minds of the executive leadership team that I'll be working with now, the confidence that I can work collaboratively across an organization, or I can help build, the team dynamic that needs to exist. So I was fortunate in this instance that, I'm already within the organization versus like out there trying to break in, having never worked with those people before. So I certainly think that helped. And I know we're gonna chat about Second City stuff in a little bit, but I will say that some of the things that I learned working there, these improv principles and practices, I live and die by every day. And I think that helped create those relationship dynamics. So having a yes and attitude, and the idea of bringing a brick, not a cathedral. And I mean, those types of things are what I practice, and it's what I work with my own teams. And so, I'd attribute a lot of that. So maybe I'd tell people, yes, learn how to read a balance sheet, and maybe go take some improv.
Don't just read a balance sheet, read the room, right?
Yes, exactly. Yep.
Well, actually, that was where I was going to go next. I think, Second City is such a cool and unusual business to have been part of. And I have to say, you and I met when you spoke at a Serious Decisions event and shared the incredible work you were doing. And I think people were like super fascinated. But tell us a little bit about, kind of your role there, and then maybe also a little bit about how, you have adopted those principles of improv and some of the things that Second City taught you.
Yeah. So I'm gonna have to brush up on my second city pitch. So give me a second. Hopefully I remember it all. It's been a few years. But so I think what a lot of people don't realize about the second city, and if you're not familiar with it, if you love a comedian, there's like a 90% chance that they trained and performed at the second city. So everyone from all the way back in the day, Alan Alda and Joan Rivers, to Steve Carell and Tina Fey. And I mean, they just turned out amazing talent decade after decade. But what is fascinating about that organization is the fact that their theaters, which they have in Chicago, Toronto, and LA, they also have training centers. Those training centers have about 10,000 students that come through every year. And the majority of them are not people that are aspiring performers or that want to be on Saturday Night Live. They're like us. They are people that are trying to get more comfortable speaking in front of a group. They want to get better at active listening. They want to understand how they can better engage and provide more meaningful feedback, or how to be more collaborative. And a lot of instances, even how to be more creative. And so they go through these classes. And aside from that, there's also a business to business arm of the Second City, and they take those practices into the corporate world and help organizations with whatever that goal might be. You know, again, it could be collaborative, it could be creative, a lot of different leadership development opportunities there. So when I came in working with their business to business arm, and as an organization, we realized that the opportunity to really build and grow revenue for this company was going to come from that part of the business. You can only cram so many people into those little theaters, and only so many people can take a class. So we started recognizing that if we figured out how to market to those training center students and to those individuals that are coming into the theaters every night, and helping educate them on what improv is and the value you get out of it, that there could be really, really great revenue growth. And so we started focusing on how to build these driveway to driveway experiences, kind of going back to the sports world, where from the time that somebody starts searching for a show, perhaps, till the time that they leave, till the time that they're at the show, to the experience they have when they leave, there's so much that we can do to make it interesting and fun. Educate them on like all of the cool behind the scenes stuff that they may never have known, like the fact that Stephen Colbert holds the record for most t-shirts sold in a single night, because that's what he did while he was also performing on stage. Yeah. And then also like educate them on, he also took classes here. Here's something that you might want to, think about. So it was a lot of fun. Of course, we had a lot of really great fun content to work with, which I recognize we were very, very fortunate. But yeah, I mean, that was kind of the marketing role that I got to operate in across all of our regions. And yeah, we did some really, really cool, fun things. And I think to your second question, some of those practices. So what a lot of people probably don't realize is that when you think improv, first of all, a lot of people think it's stand-up. And it's not. It's the idea of creating something from nothing. And the origins actually are with a woman whose name was Viola Spolin. She was actually a social worker in Chicago. And she worked with a lot of underprivileged and immigrant children at the time. And she created these games to help them better communicate and assimilate. And her son was Paul Sills. Paul Sills went to the University of Chicago, taught these games to his friends. They became the Compass Players, who then started the Second City. Oh, wow. And so really the origins of improv are communication. And so those principles and stuff that you learn are teaching you that. Comedy can be a fantastic output of it. It's amazing. But really it is all about like how you work with others, how you listen, how you set other people up for success. And that's what you're taught in a very, very tangible way.
How about from a
wow, I think everyone could benefit. Go ahead, Dan.
Yeah, no, yeah. Totally. Go ahead.
No, I was just, okay. I just think it's cool. Go ahead.
Yeah, the sales side of things, when you talk about communication, I would imagine salespeople, including even business owners like myself, would benefit from that kind of training or immersion. Like, do you see much on the sales side on the B2B, or just curious?
Oh, absolutely. Yeah, absolutely. I mean, you'd have, in some instances, you'd go in and you would help them understand how to practice better active listening. Like one example that one of our instructors would give that I thought was great is if your conversation is an arm, usually you're only listening to the elbow. And so they teach you a game, which is first word, last word. So you have to start your sentence with your first word needs to be the last word that the person just said, because it's forcing you to listen all the way through. They also would go in though and help them understand, think about crafting stories. And as marketers, right, we hear this all the time, we have to be good storytellers. But you have to like learn how to do that. It's not as simple as, oh, okay, you're right, I need to take feature function out of that slide and I'll write a great story. So helping sales organizations or marketing organizations, or even CEOs who have to go in and pitch to a board, understand how to tell more of a story about what's happening instead of just leading with facts and figures, is another area where our performers, our trainers would get called in to assist.
When you think about, sort of your first, call it whatever, 90 days, whatever the right number is, what are some of the first things that you're going to do in your new role, do you think? What are some of the things you have in mind?
Well, I've got 10 pages of typed notes that I'm happy to share with people. Well, I'll tell you that the first thing that I did, because I was fortunate to get to go through a very like nice, smooth transition with my predecessor, was I conducted one-on-ones with every single person in the company. I actually have an attachment for my treadmill that I can put my computer on. And so over 34 miles, I walked and chatted and had great conversations. That to me was the most important thing, because yes, learning from them is huge, but I think understanding the fear that people have when change occurs and helping appease that is so critical when you have leadership changes. We take for granted that it is a very unnerving thing, going back to the stuff we talked about at the top of this, which is people have already been through a lot. Everyone is very, very fragile right now. And to take an approach that like, change happens, you just have to get used to it. Like, okay, yeah, we all are very aware of the fact that like change happens. We're good at that. But it doesn't lessen the psychological impact it has on someone. So for me, that was very, very instrumental. Outside of conducting those one-on-ones, the biggest thing is there's a great book called Traction. If people haven't read it, highly recommend you read Traction. And it's excellent. It steps you through. In fact, I have it right here. Here's the plug. It walks you through what's called the EOS model, the Entrepreneurial Operating System. Mm-hmm. And it's great because it's a very foundational approach to how to think about your business. And it basically just gives you this framework, this model to say, this is how you look at doing talent reviews, right? People in the right seats. This is how you revisit mission, vision, values. We have them at Presto Sports, but they were established over 4 years ago. And we've since, even just in that company, have acquired 3 other organizations. So it's not the same company it was 4 years ago. We need to, as an organization, revisit that. Does this still reflect who we are and the direction that we're moving? It gives you really good framework for things that people find incredibly daunting. Like, here's how to run an effective meeting. They call them level 10 meetings. Here's how to do a level 10 meeting. That's what we'll start doing at Presto Sports. Documenting and communicating process. Again, something that, especially in the world of M&A, I think gets taken for granted, where, okay, people might have process, but now you've acquired, again, 3 to 4 different companies. One, are the processes aligned? Is everyone aware of them? Are they right? Where are the gaps? So using this as a framework is a lot of what we're going to be, as an organization, stepping through over the next few months to make sure that we're just all very clear and aligned on path forward. Versus like, all right, time to do a big restructure. Yeah, it's not the approach.
All right. Well, we've all got our weekend reading ahead of us then. Thank you for that. And I agree.
Okay.
I like that level 10 meeting structure. It works pretty well.
Oh yeah. Yep.
Yeah, it's a good thing. Well, I think we'll, I know we're a little bit past time. So John, maybe we'll wrap things up. Marilyn, thank you. This has been so much
Yes.
fun. I'm so
Thank
glad
you.
you were here.
Thanks,
John, any last thoughts or questions for our lovely guest?
Congrats again on the promotion, Marilyn. Thank you for joining us. And next week we have Helen Baptiste, who's a COO of Path Factory. I guess I was saying it's really rare for somebody like Marilyn who's made that transition. So Helen has also made that transition, but that's the third person in 9 months. So maybe it's a new trend. Maybe we'll see more of that, but it is very unusual. Very, very unusual. So thank you again, Marilyn, for coming out.
Thank you.
Happy Friday, everyone.